who is always going to be there, Dr. Stuart, on
right.
on a Wellness Wednesday to help us out with all our problems.
I'm always here.
You are. You just live here almost.
I should do.
Yes.
It'll be cheaper.
You're on Sunshine's Table Talk with me, Leah, and we are talking to Dr. Stuart about tiredness today, and welcome again.
Thank you.
Back on
It's
the
nice
show.
to be back.
It's always a delight to have you. Tiredness is like the biggest umbrella term you could probably ever throw at anyone, and all of humanity is like, yes, I raise my hand.
Yeah, exactly. If I go go and ask 100 people, are you tired? I'll get 99 people saying, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And one psychopath who's had just a little bit too much of something that
Yeah,
morning.
yeah.
But we're all tired, and actually doctors call tiredness a heart sink symptom. If somebody comes in and says, oh, doc, I'm tired, your heart sinks. Because of that reason, because we're all tired. But it is important to investigate it. But we all, the main reason, the most common reason is because we burn the candle at both ends. In fact, we don't just burn the candle at both ends, we try to burn it in the middle as well.
Absolutely.
We wake up too early. You know, our brains are not ready to go, our bodies are not ready to go, but the alarm says it's time to get up. So we climb out of bed, we get on with our day, we have a big mug of brown sadness water in order to try and motivate ourselves and move things forward. We rush to the kids to get to school, and we're ironing things and we're doing all that kind of stuff. We rush to get to work. We are blasted by devices with more data and information in a day than our ancestors had to deal with in their entire lifetimes. We rush home from work to pick up the kids from school, to feed them, to bathe them, to do all the things that we have to do. There's after school clubs. Then we've got to go home and actually do the administrative stuff of the house. We've got to try and catch up on the things that we should have been doing when we were at work earlier. Yes. We're drinking coffees and other things all the way through the day, and then we finally get to lie down in bed, and we lie there blinking, thinking, why can I not get to sleep? Because we've taken all those stimulants and all that stimulation on board. We don't sleep terribly well, and then the merry-go-round goes round again. So we do it to ourselves all the time, so that's why we're all tired. But there are some important medical reasons why we get tired as well.
Yes, and I think that's what we want to really focus on today as well, because there can be other contributing factors other than just, our life is a lot at the moment.
Exactly, because all of our lives are a lot, but
exactly.
there are more reasons.
Exactly. And we threw this out to our social media this week and asked you if you had any questions around tiredness, and we did have some through, so thank you so much, first of all, for asking your questions. And the first one I want to get to, I think, is, first of all, from Megan. Do women really need more sleep than men?
Oh, it's variable. It's
very variable. Individual.
So, individual. So, for example, I can get away with 4, maybe 5, preferably 6 hours of sleep. But that's fine by me. If I can get 5 hours, I am pretty comfortable on that. Other people, particularly if you're younger, you'll need an awful lot more. So my 13-year-old will sleep 12 hours comfortably, and more if I let him.
Yeah, wow,
and as we age, we actually generally need less sleep. So roughly an hour per decade is a ballpark.
Fascinating. Yeah. An hour less.
Ballpark, yeah.
So I'm in my 30s now. Okay. So when I get to my 40s, that means I'll only need,
the day you wake up on your 40th birthday, you'll have 1 hour less sleep, which gives you 1 more hour during the day. It's a rule of thumb.
I've never heard that before in my life.
Oh, there you go. Maybe I made it up. Who knows?
Don't say that. People need to trust you. Oh, my goodness. We've also got one from Rachel who asked, if you get a bad night's sleep, do you have to sleep extra the next time to make up for it?
You can't really catch it up is the bigger problem.
Okay.
It's not that straightforward. So you'll usually have a little bit of a hangover effect for a couple of days as a result. But once you have a decent night's sleep, generally that's enough. Sleep is important for a number of reasons, but physiologically it's a time when our brain can flush out toxins.
Sure.
And actually absolute sleep deprivation is fatal. So if we literally don't sleep within a much shorter period of time than people realise, you will die because your brain can't handle the build-up of toxins. So it is a critical function for us to survive. But you don't need huge amounts in order to function with it, but you'll be pretty tired, pretty awful. But it's not really possible to catch it up. You just have to have a better night's sleep, and you'll hopefully feel better within a few days.
What vitamins and supplements will help sleep as well and help us wake up in the morning? That's a question from Clarissa online.
Well, if you have a balanced diet, if you have a good, nutritious, balanced diet, then you shouldn't need any supplements. People often rely on things like magnesium and other things like that, and the reality is most of us will have completely healthy, balanced diets. If your diet is lacking for whatever reason, then I would suggest a multivitamin rather than something more specific.
Okay, sure.
But realistically, the better way to get those on board is to have a balanced diet.
I've had a text come in from Diana, Dr. Stuart, who says, "Hi, I'm starting to feel tired again, and I'm wondering if you think it could be my iron infusion wearing off. I had it April last year. Should I go to the doctor and book another blood test?"
Short answer, yes. So I do iron infusions probably every week for my patients, and they're really common. Young women, the most common cause is heavy periods. However, there are other important causes that we need to exclude. So I would hope in Diana's case that she's been investigated and we've got a reason why she's iron deficient.
Sure.
But usually when I do an infusion for my patients, I do explain to them that they'll probably get 12 to 18 months out of it, and then we probably want to check their iron levels again and make sure that they're still healthy.
Dr. Stuart, I've got a question.
Go for it.
What are some other reasons why we're tired?
Well,
give me everything.
Give you everything. Oh, we'll give you some of them.
Okay.
I mean, we only have an hour here.
Okay,
but,
sure.
We've talked about lack of sleep already, and we've talked about iron deficiency, and iron deficiency is commonly associated with another similar condition, which is anemia, and they're kind of co-located.
Of course.
So both of those, but other things like a poor diet, which we touched on earlier with the vitamins, a sedentary lifestyle can actually make us very tired as well. If we're not pushing ourselves, not exercising enough, then we can actually
really
start to feel sluggish.
Is that a cycle thing though? Because then you're feeling tired, so you don't want to exercise because you think I should rest, but then you feel more tired. Okay.
Absolutely, and a lot of this is multifactorial as well, as we see. So it's not just one thing, but stress, anxiety and depression certainly can feed into it. But medical conditions as well, thyroid problems, sleep apnea.
Oh, yes.
As well as anxiety and depression, which is a common lurking issue that we don't always address properly. So there's lots and lots of causes of it, and it's important to identify if it's the issue with tiredness is it's often quite insidious. It creeps up on us. If you come in and tell me, I was sleeping fine till last Tuesday and now I just can't sleep. Well, clearly something happened last Tuesday, whether it was a major stressor or something happened. You had a massive hemorrhage. Something has happened that has caused that tiredness. Usually it creeps up on us and you're kind of like, no, it's been months and months and months and I just can't quite pinpoint why it is. That's much more common. So it usually is quite insidious.
Yeah, sure. So can we talk about the thyroid problems for a second? So if we're maybe feeling tired and the cause might be more leading towards thyroid, is there a different kind of tiredness that we should be looking out for, or can you walk me through any sort of, I suppose, accompanying things that might then go, okay, yes, that you could lean towards?
So we would be thinking about an underactive thyroid, because an overactive thyroid is a bit like having a few too many coffees.
Okay, sure.
The thyroid is a bit like the gas and the brakes in a car. It sort of regulates the speed that everything operates at. And if your thyroid is underactive, then everything slows down. You're more fatigued, you're constipated, everything is just a lot slower.
Sluggish.
You put on a bit of weight. And I'll be honest, everybody who comes to see me wants it to be thyroid, because we give you the thyroid medication, you suddenly feel amazing, you lose weight, everything goes great. And it almost never is, unfortunately. Everybody wants it to be thyroid because it's such an easy fix, but actually it's relatively rare. But it's really important to try and figure out, why are we feeling so tired? So a simple blood test will give us a raft of answers in that space. And hopefully, as I say, and particularly in young females, it's most commonly going to be heavy periods. And then we can have a discussion about, okay, well, let's fix the iron deficiency first of all, and then we can go on and talk about trying to stop the heavy periods to begin with. But if it's more general tiredness and there's no signs of iron deficiency, then we do need to investigate these more medical conditions like thyroid, and then get to the point of, well, is it stress, is it anxiety, is it depression, are you having difficulty at work, are you burning out, all of these kind of things.
Okay. And I think the burnout one is so relevant and topical as well, right? Because we are so used to being such a busy society, and that it's very normal and almost celebrated if you've got a busy schedule. You're like, too busy, I'm just so important. Well, not that that's your sort of kind of mindset when you're talking about it, but often I think we do celebrate that kind of busyness.
And particularly for people who work for large organisations, or for people who run their own businesses.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no option. It's either part of the culture, and you just have to go along with it, or it's your own business, and if you don't literally stay on top of every aspect, your livelihood could be threatened in your business that you've invested so much time in. So there are some real challenges within that burnout specifically that people struggle with. And sometimes, quite commonly, when I start to broach the subject and I say to people, that this might be anxiety, depression, burnout, something like that, they're very resistant to I've got nothing to be upset about, I've got nothing to be anxious about, and that requires a bit more of a discussion, because these are physical medical conditions that don't necessarily have an obvious trigger like that.
What did you call it? A heart sink?
Heart sink symptom, yeah.
Which is really sad, but also I suppose it is one of those because it's so broad.
It's because it's so broad and because it's so common. It's not that we're not invested in it.
No,
it's just
you're
kind of like, oh, okay, yeah.
Because
this is a big subject, and there's a lot of things that could potentially be causing it.
Absolutely.
And it's actually really important to investigate it, because how much does tiredness infect, and I use that word deliberately,
how much
does it infect every aspect of your life?
Absolutely. And I think there's so much that we put up with, and one of those things like tiredness doesn't have to be something you have to put up with, right?
Exactly. But also, as I said to you before, it's insidious.
Yeah.
So sometimes we don't realise until somebody turns around and goes, man, you are so tired, and you're like, actually, do you know what I am? And I'm always like this. Why am I like this?
Yeah, exactly. It's tricky. Hey, we've had another message through on our socials from Cass. A little bit different, so it may not be in your ballpark, but we'll see how we go. She asks, I would love to know about nightmares, particularly with kids, but also generally. Why do they happen? How can we prevent them? And what's the best way to respond to them?
Well, first of all, everything's in my ballpark. That's one of the beauties of the job I do, is that people will come in with literally any question.
Amazing.
And I have to deal with it. So I would suggest that is absolutely in my ballpark. However, it's probably not necessarily in the scope of this conversation today about tiredness. But
Sure.
Talking about it specifically, there's lots of things that can trigger it. It could be sleep problems. So if we're not sleeping deeply enough or getting to the right levels of sleep, then that can be an issue. It can be an issue with bullying and harassment and all these other problems during the day. So it's probably something that warrants a more specific discussion with the patient's own GP in terms of why this is happening and the specifics of it. And often for a patient like this, if we can't find an organic cause for it, and again, maybe some blood tests would be relevant, but potentially send them on for a sleep study or something to make sure that we're actually getting to the right levels of sleep and that the sleep quality is where we want it to be.
Yeah, okay, great. Now, in terms of nightmares, something that would give me a nightmare is having to give up anxiety-inducing caffeine, I suppose.
Yes,
but that would, that would give me nightmares. But I suppose my beautiful segue. Thank you so much. Yes. I know it's long-winded, but we'll get there.
We'll get there.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm long-winded too.
Yeah, okay, good. Is all about how we can sort of maybe change lifestyle factors.
Yeah, I mean that.
Like, how does caffeine play into it? Because I love it.
I love it too. And look, the reality is, it's a legal addictive stimulant. It's something that we all variously dabble with throughout our lives. I have a very toxic relationship with caffeine. It hates me and loves me in equal measure. And I get lulled into a false sense of security that actually I could just have one more. And it'll just help me burn that little bit longer throughout the day, and then I don't sleep well that night, and then that little chat that we had earlier plays out. So, there are a lot of lifestyle factors is the important thing in this. Okay. So, but it is the bottom of the very sizable barrel of things I need to walk through with a patient.
Sure, okay.
So I would very much like to exclude all those other things that we've talked about, first of all, in terms of, is there an organic medical cause for this? Is it, something like iron deficiency, thyroid problems? Is it that we are anxious, stressed, burnt out? Is it something else that, screaming kids and dealing with being a new parent?
Yes.
For example. And then the very bottom of that barrel is, okay, what are the lifestyle changes that we need to consider? But there are certainly a lot of strategies. So exercise is a very good component for all of us in terms of both de-stressing and also improving our quality of life, and then tiring us out, actually. And it gives us that rush of endorphins. Well, not everybody gets that rush. I don't.
No, I don't. Not yet.
My sedentary lifestyle is definitely not helpful when it comes to sleep, but that's what I use the caffeine for.
Yeah, okay.
But it is a positive aspect for many people. And then dietary changes as well. If we find ourselves sometimes slipping into that, we just eat the comfort food or the things that aren't necessarily as nutritious as we would like them to be. And again, we can then, start to feel our energy levels dipping. And anybody who's ever had a large carb load at lunchtime and then tried to somehow function in an afternoon knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a super important point to take away. How can we expect to continue functioning if that's what we're actually treating our bodies with?
Yeah, right, okay. And here's a question, though. Around exercise, is this true that if you exercise too late, that then that affects your sleep because it keeps you awake?
So it depends.
Is there an ideal window for exercise?
It varies. And again, a lot of this advice is about finding what's comfortable for you. So for some people, going and doing exercise, then jumping in the shower and jumping into bed is perfect for a preamble for getting to sleep. For other people, that'll just wake them up and they'll be super alert. So you have to find what works for you and figure out what sort of... there's no one size fits all in all of this. It's a formula that you have to calculate for yourself in order to try and figure out how does this best fit into my lifestyle.
Yeah, sure. And what sort of other lifestyle factors should we be looking at? Maybe we've ruled out sort of the bigger sort of things, and we want to maybe tackle some of the ways that we're dealing with our life. And stuff.
Sure. So things like reducing alcohol, looking at our weight and whether or not there's a healthier weight we could be aiming for, tobacco consumption in particular, and then managing your chronic medical conditions. These are all quite important, and then looking at strategies for improving your sleep, so regular sleep schedule. So, for example, a lot of us, if we don't have a regular 9-to-5 job, for example, if we work freelance or whatever, and a lot of people, particularly in Western Australia, will work FIFO. So they'll have and night shifts and weekend shifts and variable shifts, and a nod to all those paramedics and other people out there who do the most awful shifts, on a regular basis. So their sleep schedule is completely upended on a day-to-day and week-by-week basis, and that just makes life so much more difficult.
And we have a text that has come through from Julian, and they say, I have a Graves' hypothyroidism. Tiredness is a problem for me. I have insomnia and tiredness from the Graves' medication.
So, it could be a combination of things, but really getting on top of the underlying medical condition, which is something we've kind of chatted about already, is really important in these situations. So an overactive as well as underactive thyroid is an issue in this area. And we need to make sure that our management of it is appropriate. So if we're really struggling with the symptoms, particularly of the medication, that's something to raise with your GP and say, look, I'm not happy with this. I'm not functioning well with this. There needs to be a better solution to be found here, and then they can have a discussion about what our options are and go from there.
Yeah, okay, great. Can we also talk about how stress plays a factor into tiredness? Because we've sort of touched on it a little bit, but I think this is something that is really downplayed a lot, and we don't even think about it considering. Obviously, there's one factor where stress is keeping you up because you're just running through things in your mind over and over again.
And that's the more obvious, but people assume that if they're not doing that, it can't be stress. But stress plays a very physical role as well as a psychological role on our bodies.
Yeah,
and
sure.
As an example, there are, if you go for an operation, say, and I'm talking about a different type of stress for a second here, but if you go for an operation, an anaesthetist will knock you out, so you will be completely unconscious, you won't feel any pain, but your body knows every cut, every stab that is made. And there is a chemical release which happens when that happens. So it's essentially the same as you being stabbed in the street. Your body has the same physical response. So there is a recovery that needs to happen as a result of that. And people don't often give that enough recognition after they've had a surgical procedure. They just think, well, I was asleep, so why am I so fatigued after this? But actually your body is having to deal with that stressor. And in many ways, the psychological stresses that we face from everyday life situations can impact us in a very similar way. And they wear us down, they drag us down, and it is something that even subconsciously our brain can be trying to deal with. And dealing with all those chemicals and all those other things that surge as a result is something that our bodies need to process. So it can very much have that knock-on effect to our sleep quality. And actually it's an important distinction as well that we haven't actually touched on. You can have considerable sleep quantity but poor sleep quality.
Yes.
And actually what I'm really interested, I don't care if you sleep 2 hours as long as you wake up rested.
Yeah, right, okay.
If you wake up feeling exhausted after 12 hours, well, you might as well have not slept at all if that's the case.
Yeah, right. Just going back to the stress point, if you, so for example, I'll talk about my own reference because I always think that's good.
You like to overshare.
I do like to overshare. You are absolutely correct.
We love you for that.
Well, so I've got a big sort of family thing, a family stressor, I suppose you could have, and without oversharing that, it's happening on the weekend. Would I, even though I feel fine about it, would knowing that it's coming up, then be playing, because I've just felt more tired this week, and since we've sort of had this sort of family thing come up, I've been more tired overall. Do you think that would be a contributing factor then to why I maybe not be as regulated with my sleep at the moment and then feeling more tired? And would I get more tired the closer to the event?
I think that's a reasonable conclusion to reach without going into obviously too much detail about
Yeah,
it.
of course.
I think that's a very reasonable and plausible explanation. And actually, this is one of the things that a lot of patients will come and say is that I thought it was this thing, but actually it's persisted beyond, or it preceded this.
Right. Okay.
So we all try to find causes and triggers for our tiredness or our stresses or whatever, and that's appropriate. But yes, it would be a very reasonable conclusion to say that, look, if you've got a big thing happening in life, that's going to have a knock-on effect on your stress levels, which is going to have a knock-on effect on your sleep quality, and therefore you're going to feel more tired.
Yeah.
But if it persists for several weeks or months, and it doesn't seem to be shifting despite the fact that the underlying stressor is lifting or changing or whatever, then that points to maybe there being some other cause, and that's when you should come and chat to us.
I want to talk about some symptoms of tiredness, because obviously we have talked about that it's very broad, but what are sort of things that can result because of, exhaustion?
Absolutely. It's the vagaries sometimes of them are the challenge, because people don't always associate them. So difficulty concentrating is definitely one. Feeling low, a low mood in general, and irritability. As well as some physical symptoms like headaches and body aches, things like that. Just having generally a fuzzy brain. A lot of people identify with that. And forgetfulness as well is another common one. And a lot of these symptoms are not terribly specific, and you don't automatically think, is it because I'm tired? But it's certainly something to consider in those moments when you're thinking, why is that? I'm just feeling a bit fuzzy. What's going on there?
It's funny because all of those things lead to stress, and then stress leads to tiredness, and they all seem to be interlinked. But I suppose especially we've touched on before the burning of the candle of all of the candle, or throwing the candle in the fire, essentially.
Basically, everything's aflame.
Exactly.
The world is on fire.
Yeah. Hence why I suppose the term burnout.
Absolutely. That's a very nice segue.
Thank you so much. But tell me about burnout. Like, what does that look and feel like? And can that be different to just general tiredness? Or?
Oh, very definitely.
Okay.
And I guess it's probably in some ways its own discussion. But there are sort of cardinal features that we look for in terms of burnout. So people who have a sense of self-doubt and a sense of failure. In particularly in relation to work, but it actually tends to become more pervasive throughout their whole life.
Yeah, sure.
Feeling helpless, trapped and defeated is another common cluster of symptoms. Feeling detached and alone is again non-specific in a sense. If you're just feeling that way, you wouldn't necessarily tie it to that burnout that we're talking about. But more commonly, a loss of motivation and being more cynical and having maybe a more negative outlook on life, and a decreased sense of satisfaction and sense of accomplishment. We all generally get up and go to work because we can feel some satisfaction, not always all day, every day, but I know when I drive home from work and I feel like I've really achieved something, like I've picked something up with a patient, or somebody has said, that's really helped me, that's the sense of satisfaction that I look for. And if I feel like I've gone a long period of time and I'm not seeing that so much, it's sometimes worth thinking, do you know how long has it been since I've had a holiday? Is it time for me to take a break?
And is that kind of the best sort of treatment for burnout? Because, I mean, we can't all just take holidays like whenever we want.
Well, if we could, we wouldn't need to burn out in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
Permanent
leave.
Yes. So, no, again, it's a very individual approach. So we need to look at, are you in the wrong job, in the wrong career? Are you, is there something that's more fundamentally a problem?
Yeah.
Or is it literally just you've been running your own business, you've not taken a break in, 24 months?
Yeah,
and you literally just need to be able to turn off, to hand over the reins of that business to somebody for just a week or two and be able to detach fully. And that can be very, very difficult. For some people, that's not possible. So it's about looking at your individual situation, and that's where I would walk through with the patient. Okay, talk me through it. What's your job like?
Okay.
What do you do? And then how do we find an opportunity for you to take some space? Because long term, you're not going to survive if you continue to burn out this way. So we need to, as much as it might be financially impacting in the short term, we need to take that step and say, look, you need to take, for the greater good of tomorrow, you need to take that space today.
Because otherwise you'll take yourself out of the running and you might not be able to work for 3 months, 6 months, a year later on down the track.
Absolutely, and it's very real.
Yeah. What are the smaller sort of things that we can do to help burnout and I suppose it's linked with stress and sleep in general. What are the kind of other things that we can be doing?
It's trying to identify the stressors in our job, trying to identify the things that really push us harder and trying to limit those or trying to share those out among other other people in the team and just sort of share the load, share the burden.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of people are in a position where they take a lot of the responsibility on themselves. A lot of organisations depend on those people to function. But sometimes it's about delegating and accepting that, okay, maybe it doesn't get done the perfect way that you want it to, but at least it gets done.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you can take a step back for a bit.
Yeah, it's all linked as well with those. There's been a lot of things in the news recently about like boundaries at work, and there's that quiet quitting trend and all of that kind of stuff about being like, okay, well, when it comes to 5 or 5:30, I'm out, and I'm not going to continue to push myself past that for the lifestyle I want, the life that I want, and the kind of health and wellness I want. So all those sorts of things contribute. And I suppose as well, just to finish, what kind of role does like mindfulness and that sort of having stillness in our life, does that really, even if we can't sleep or we can't take a holiday, but we're having, a moment of mindfulness or taking pause or deep breaths, how much can that be a catalyst to some of the burnout that we're experiencing?
We all will find ways in which we benefit from different techniques, and for some people, when I suggest things like mindfulness, they're like, oh no, that doesn't sound like me, or I'm not interested. But if it's something that you're open to, very much it can help. It's meditation, mindfulness, all these things are very relaxing, they're very centering, and they allow us to focus on the now and the individual and all the important aspects of what we're actually doing this for. I did have a patient who he was actually concerned about the opposite. He overslept even though he had poor sleep quality. But I recommended that he pop some herbs into his pillow, and now he always wakes on time.
This, I feel like, is something that I don't understand.
Yeah, I think you missed the joke.
Dude. I can see, if you could see Dr. Stuart in the studio, his deadpan face is telling me that he's giving me a great joke. I think I'm going to I need to read it again. In a herb garden. He was on time. You didn't say the herb. I didn't hear the herb garden.
Put herbs in his pillow, Leah. I'm so disappointed.
Wakes on time. Oh, dear. Okay, look. Sometimes I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but at least I'm in the shed.
Yeah, it's in the right place.
Yeah,
your
that's
heart's
right.
in the right place.
That's right. Thank you so much, Dr. Stuart, for joining us again on Table Talk. I'm
Absolutely
so sorry.
My pleasure.
I don't get your jokes. We're going to try again.
We're going to have hopefully a very long opportunity, multiple opportunities for you to not get my jokes in the future.
Because also it's awkward if I don't get it because people can't see that I'm processing. This is an audio medium. So
I get it.
Yeah.
The look of confusion on your face, though, was priceless.
Okay,
so we should
good.
probably start filming these.
Maybe we should.